Hey, my name is Ben Wood, and I did my case study on a kid named Tristan. He's a 14-year-old white male, and he's my brother in law's stepbrother. So I am related to him, but I'm not really close to him, so I didn't think it would be a problem. I don't know him extremely well. He comes from a pretty typical family, just a regular middle class working family, and his physical appearance, he's in good shape, but he's a little bit overweight. But he's extremely active, so I think he needs to watch what he eats because it's not a lack of exercise. It's probably diet related. Some of the things that I noticed about him, he's extremely smart. He acts more like an adult than he does a kid. He gets along really well with adults, and that impressed me about him. He's extremely motivated and ambitious, and he's very likable. So he's got a lot of really good features and characteristics that I think will help him to be really successful one day. I met with him about 10 or 11 times throughout this semester, and it was really fun getting to know him a little bit better. Our first meeting was kind of awkward. I didn't really know what I was going to do or talk about. I just jumped right in it. So we spoke about some pretty simple stuff like his vision, hearing, appetite, sense of smell, attention span. I just kind of was all over the place and asked him a few questions that I could think of. Physically, he does have some facial hair and he's a little bit overweight, but he works a lot on the farm. His stepbrother, my brother-in-law, has a welding business, and he spends a lot of time out there, and he does a lot of work around their farm, so he's very active. As far as hearing, he listens to extremely loud music, and he said he plays video games with his headphones on extremely loud. He even told me that he might be getting hearing damage. He thought that he was already doing damage to his ears. I mentioned that I've got some issues with my hearing, and that he doesn't want to go down that road. It's not pleasant, so we'll see if he takes that for what it's worth. His attention span was pretty short. He would get bored pretty quickly. He wasn't rude, but he would get bored pretty fast. He may be a little bit hyperactive, not to a point where I'd think he would need anything. He's just a normal, kid that's kind of wound up. But he mentioned a lot of things he enjoys doing in his spare time, a lot of risk-taking behavior, which we talked about a lot in the book. His brain, very typically, like other people his age, really gets a thrill from taking big risks and doing dangerous activities. So he's jumping off of bluffs and riding four-wheelers really fast, and doing a lot of things like that. He seems to really take other people into consideration. He doesn't think the world just revolves around him, which I thought was pretty impressive for someone his age. He constantly asks about other people and his effect on other people when he's doing anything. Like he was eating dinner and he was going to eat the last roll, and he looked around and really thought about, wonder if somebody else might want this more than me. And so just some little stuff like that spoke to his thought for other people. He does we talked about desire for really sour treats, so I asked him if he likes sour things. He loves sour anything. He eats a lot of fast food and not a lot of vegetables. So like I said earlier, his weight, he's a little bit heavier than he should be, but it's probably just diet related because he gets plenty of outside activity. And long term, that could obviously lead to cardiac issues, diabetes, high blood pressure, and that sort of thing. So that's something he might want to change in the future. I told him that when he gets older, he'll be much more susceptible to gaining weight. It doesn't take long to gain weight as you start getting older. So, as far as cognition, I think he's in the formal operational thought stage. He's definitely able to think hypothetically, and his thoughts can be very abstract. He's able to do really good manipulation in his head. He likes to build things, and he can think of something he wants to build and put it together in his head, and he can even figure out the problems that he's going to have, or the ways to fix things that might not go together correctly. And I would attribute that to him spending so much time with his dad and his stepbrother. They're both really mechanically inclined, and they've spent a lot of time working with him on different kinds of projects, so he's really good at those things. He doesn't really think he's the center of the universe, so as far as egocentrism, I'd say he's less egocentric than most people his age. He's very thoughtful of others, and he doesn't take pictures of everything he's doing, and he doesn't seem to be obsessed with social media and his image. He's pretty confident in himself. We spoke about his memory, and he said that he can remember anything that he's taught as long as he gets 2 looks at it. So that's impressive. He thinks he has really good recall, so he doesn't necessarily think he needs to take notes, but I mentioned that he will need to in the future because it will get more complicated. As far as intelligence and creativity and risk factors for later development, there's very few. It was almost hard to use him as the case study because there weren't a whole lot of things that were abnormal or risk factors for him. His parents are both very loving and involved. They both hold graduate degrees. They're stable financially, and they spend a lot of time with him. They spent a lot of time with him when he was younger. So I don't see any real risk factors. He doesn't drink or smoke, he says, and he doesn't seem to have temperament problems or be antisocial or any of that kind of stuff. He's just very, very normal. I would say a lot of the reason he is smart and does act like an adult is because he grew up a little bit out of town, and so he spent a lot of time with older family members, and so he learned what he could from them, and that's sort of how he adapted growing up, was being around older people. So I think that's why he acts a little bit more mature for his age. He does hang out with his friends frequently, but not, when he was developing more and he was younger, he grew up with older people. And then, as I said earlier, he's very creative and he can manipulate things in his mind, and he does help out in the welding shop with his stepbrother. And he likes to draw on napkins, paper towels, or just anything that he can find to draw on. And he likes to draw off-road vehicles and accessories, which is what his stepbrother does. And he likes to actually go so far as to think about how they're going to fit and how they're going to function, and not just how they look, and they don't just magically fit on there. He actually thinks about how it's going to fit on there. So he digs deeper into things, not just the surface level. His language and education, he's said he's doing well in school right now, but he says it's boring, and it's not uncommon for his kids his age for grades to decline around 12, 13, 14, but I don't think that he's going to have any real trouble with that. He's bored with school, but he still does really well, and I think he'll be okay there. He doesn't enjoy reading or know any foreign languages, which if he'd started younger, maybe if his parents would have started him when he was much smaller, he would have enjoyed it and it would have been easier to stick. But he said he doesn't worry about it now because it's too hard. I told him it would be very helpful, and he's already thinking about money, so I said that if you were bilingual, it might help you make more money and find a better job. So I tried to approach it from that angle, so he said maybe. As far as his personality and sense of self, he's very confident, and he believes he'll be successful. That's what he said, and he enjoys socializing and being the center of attention among his friends. I wrote that he has very high self-esteem, which is what it appears to me to be. His personality is still developing, but he does have a very sophisticated sense of humor, and I think he basically already knows who he is. He seems to just be very consistent every time I've seen him, and he seems to know what he wants to do later down the road, which I'll get to in a little bit. He fits the typical mold for a 14-year-old boy. He dresses like his dad. He likes to play rough sports, hunting, fishing, being outdoors. His favorite pastime, he said, was to ride four-wheelers. So he's pretty typical. He has facial hair and his voice is getting a little deeper, but he still kind of looks like a kid to me. He said he's interested in girls but has no plans for a girlfriend because he's too busy, but maybe. I can tell that he has a strong moral identity. He has a really good sense of right and wrong, and fair and unfair, just and unjust. He's outspoken about injustices that he perceives, and he'll stand up to his friends and stand up for what he believes in. So I think that he's pretty set in that regard. His parents raised him with very high moral standards, and I've known his parents a long time, and they're very, very good, kind people. So I think he's on track to being like them. I wrote that he analyzes situations from every different angle to make the best decision. And like I said, with the role, just looking around, that's a small example, but he is always considering other people when he makes a decision, which I think is impressive for somebody his age. He's for emotions, attachment, social arrangements, he's got a very strong bond with his parents. They're extremely close, and his parents have been married for 20-something years, and they've always had a good, solid home environment. And he's got good friends, which I think the good home environment and the good group of friends leads to being happier and having a higher self-esteem. And ultimately the parents, I think, is where that starts. So I don't see any signs of depression or emotional instability or any risk factors for any kind of emotional disturbance. Hopefully he will continue to stay away from drinking, smoking, drugs, etc. But he doesn't seem to have any interest in any of that stuff at this point. But that's always a risk for anyone. That anyone can be a victim to that. He's pretty big into Facebook and has hundreds of friends on there, but admits that he only knows, as he put it, a quarter of them in real life. I don't have a Facebook, so I don't really relate to that. So, meeting Tristan, I'd met him 4 or 5 times, but I didn't really know him. But getting to know him was just a great experience. He was super smart, and he's in the age group of kids that I think I want to work with. So I thought that was a really good experience to get to know him. And most of the stuff from our book that we went over, I brought up and tried to compare him back and forth to it, but he was so, you know, straight down the line. He didn't really have any risk factors for much of anything, so it made it kind of difficult to really pinpoint anything. I guess the biggest thing I would say was his diet. When we talked about health and body, he's definitely, and his dad's in good shape. His dad's not overweight, but he's the only one in the family that is a little bit. And I think it's just because he just really likes to eat fast food and eat junk food and soft drinks, and I think they try to keep it away. But he's very active, so that's the one concern is for his health later, because when he gets, you know, to be in his 20s, he may be gaining weight pretty rapidly if he were to keep on the same path. But that was really the only thing I could think of that was even, you know, something to look out for, any kind of a concern. If I were to make any suggestions for improving, you know, his personal development, it's just really tough to do, because he's, like I said, he's not got a lot of risk factors and he comes from a good family. But I would encourage him to get maybe more, I don't know how to put this, into town, because he lives out in the country ways, and so he does get isolated some, and he does have friends. But I think that they need to get him maybe involved in more sports or something where he is brought into, you know, groups of friends that he doesn't know as well, because the ones that are out near him he knows really well, and so there's not a lot of diversity with meeting new people. So maybe getting on to some kind of a team, or get into some kind of hobby where he can get out and meet new people and new experiences. So that might be one thing I would do besides the improvements in diet. So that's Tristan, and had a great time meeting him, and thanks for watching.